Stephen Smith, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Barry. Thank you.
The Prime Minister has announced this morning that she's going to a NATO summit later this month to have further talks on Afghanistan. You'll be going with her on that trip. Given there are OSMIN talks going on right now, why is there the need to do this?
Well, the NATO ISAF summit in Lisbon later this month will be dealing very directly with the transition in Afghanistan. So we're obviously part of the 47-country International Security Assistance Force. Everyone has agreed we've got to transition to Afghanistan security competence and responsibility. And so Lisbon's a very important both NATO and ISAF summit to start mapping out the transition to Afghan responsibility. We continue to be of the view that we can do our bit, our job in Oresgon on the next 2 to 4 years, training the Afghan National Army and police in Oresgon province.
Is this a heads of government meeting?
It's a leaders meeting, but there'll also be defence ministers there. Obviously, it's a NATO ISAF meeting, so I'll be accompanying her. In addition to the formal meeting itself, of course, there's opportunities for a range of bilaterals. So it's an important international community meeting on Afghanistan, and it's a very good thing that the Prime Minister's been able to find time to go.
What will Australia essentially be telling the other participants?
Well, we'll be saying to the rest of the international community that we are committed to transitioning to Afghan-led security in Afghanistan, that whilst we can't leave tomorrow, we can't be there forever. So we have to train the Afghan National Army, the Afghan National Police and the local police forces to be in a position to manage security arrangements themselves. And this is the strategy and the approach that we have
not there forever, but you will be there for at least 10 years.
Well, our current training mission we see being done in 2 to 4 years, which is consistent with the timetable set by the Afghanistan conference in Kabul earlier this year. But after that, we do envisage the capacity for us to be there in some oversight or embed capacity. Time will tell what the detail and circumstances of that are, but the Prime Minister and I have outlined that in the course of the parliamentary debate. But also we envisage that we'll be there in terms of making a contribution on the civilian capacity building and development assistance front for a long time, and I expect the international community will be there in that respect as well.
Now, the Secretary of State said yesterday that Australia has offered more accommodation on ports and facilities. Why do they need to increase their access at this point?
Well, I think we need to take it step by step. There's been a lot of leaping to conclusions in the media over the last couple of days, but the United States is conducting what's called a force posture review, looking at how it positions its forces throughout the world. It has bases in other countries. Japan, for example, it has a presence in the Republic of Korea, and in Australia, of course, we have joint facilities. So in the course of the United States considering its force posture review, the possibility arises that the United States could utilise more Australia. And that's very high on the agenda for OSMIN today. And we've been cooperating for a long period of time under the alliance, both in an exercise sense, in a cooperation sense, in a training sense. We certainly envisage that that will increase and enhance, but in terms of detailed decisions, there's a bit more time to go for that.
OK, but why would they want to?
Well, the United States is a significant power. It conducts strategic reviews from time to time, as we do, and so you look to the future. But it's also making changes to the disposition of its forces throughout the Asia-Pacific, reducing, for example, the number of forces it has in Japan. So it's looking at those matters. But we welcome it very much because we want to see the United States engaged in the Asia-Pacific. That's very important to Australia. It's very important to stability in our region. We've had that stability since the end of World War II, largely as a result of United States presence. So, and enhanced engagement is something we very strongly support, whether that's, for example, through the United States joining an expanded East Asia summit, or the United States taking part, as Australia did, in the ASEAN Plus Defence Ministers meeting. All of these are unambiguously good things for our region and also for Australia. It's certainly in our national interest to be very positively disposed to enhancing our engagement in that military and defence cooperation sense.
Now, whenever Australia and the United States get together, there's a lot of talk about China. Is it true to say that the Americans are generally little more wary of China, more suspicious of China than Australia is?
Well, I wouldn't characterise or categorise it in that way. China is obviously on the rise. It's a rising power. And indeed, as the defence brief to me, the incoming government brief made clear, that rise is even quicker and stronger than people anticipated a relatively short period ago. We believe, Australia believes, that China will emerge as, to use a Chinese phrase, into a harmonious environment. It'll be a responsible international stakeholder. And that's what we want to see. So that's why
the Americans believe that?
Well, I think I'm not putting words into the mouth of America, but I think both Australia and America want to have positive and constructive relationships with China. Certainly from Australia's perspective, a key bilateral relationship into the future will be the bilateral relationship between China and the United States. We want that to be a positive and constructive one. But sometimes when people think about the rise of China, they somehow think that the United States is going away. Well, to use an American expression, the United States ain't going anywhere. Of course, its relative power will be eclipsed as other powers like China and India rise, but it's not going away. Indeed, all of the evidence is that it wants to enhance its engagement in the Asia-Pacific, and that's a good thing. But the rise of China, the rise of India, the bilateral relationships between the United States and China, the United States and India and China will be the most important, in very many respects, bilateral relationships in the second half of this century.
Well, given the language you've used, and Hillary Clinton did use words like that, you're so positive and she wanted a cooperative relationship, would it be true to say that this administration is more open to that than the previous administration in the United States?
Well, again, I wouldn't reflect on respective administrations. I think what not just the United States, not just Australia, but the international community is seized of is China's rise and how rapid that has become. In addition to its economic and social growth, of course, we also see military modernisation, and Australia says on that front that any country, as it expands economically, is entitled to see a comparable expansion in its defence or military arrangements. But we have made the point to China, both privately and publicly, that there does need to be transparency about China's military strategy, and that's an issue which we raise with China, as does the United States, as do, for example, our ASEAN colleagues in our region.
And given what Hillary Clinton had to say about Kevin Rudd's role in the region and his knowledge of China, was it a deliberate decision then that he should go to China in the week leading up to these talks?
Oh, and I think the foreign minister's travel is not necessarily sort of linked one to the other, but the United States does very much appreciate not just Kevin's expertise on China, but the fact that Australia is in the region. We have, in terms of our own relationship with China, been in very many respects on the ground floor with China's development, with our early recognition of China back in the 1970s through the Whitlam government. So they value very much our analysis of China's rise, just as they value very much the sorts of intellectual contribution we bring to the table.
Yeah, but you say it's not only Kevin Rudd. Kevin Rudd's name was the only one mentioned yesterday. She didn't say she'd be picking Julia Gillard's brains on China.
Well, they pick Australia's brains, which is one of the reasons why, one of the things that the United States very much appreciates are our embed officers dealing with them in a direct basis, whether it's in Kabul headquarters in the International Security Assistance Force or just doing what we do this weekend with the OSMIN meetings. We let America know what our view is, what our strategic view is, what our tactical view is. We work very closely with them as our alliance partner. That's appreciated, but certainly that relationship remains the bedrock of our strategic and security and defence arrangements, and it's unambiguously in our national interest to keep on that path and indeed to enhance it, which is the prospect that this particular meeting holds out.
Now, on the issue that Brian Toohey raised before on the F-35, the Joint Strike Fighter, the Pentagon apparently is about to announce a major cost blowout. How much wriggle room have we got on this project?
Well, we've committed to, by 14, we've got what's called the conventional or the Strike Fighter A version. Bob Gates commissioned a ground floor or a basement review some time ago. He's expecting to receive that before the end of this month. We have already calculated into our thinking both the capacity for cost and scheduling scheduling delay and cost blowout. So it's never a surprise in a very big project that's technologically challenging that these things occur, but we're going to take it step by step. We will wait and see what the basement review that Bob Gates has commissioned says. I'll obviously have the opportunity today and tomorrow to speak generally to Secretary Gates about this matter, but we'll wait to see that analysis and what implications, if any, flow. One of the advantages we have is that the strike fighter we propose to purchase is, as I say, it's described as a conventional strike fighter. It's already been the subject of testing and trialling in the United States in advance of its schedule. So we may well be better placed than other countries who have committed to buy different versions or variants.
But isn't this conventional aircraft,